there, folks. Welcome to the program. This, of course, is Stinchfield, the podcast. Great to have you along with me today. I want more answers from how this shooter got to fire 8 shots at President Trump. We've now had, today will be the 3rd hearing on this in Congress. Finally, Christopher Wray actually answering some questions, which is a surprise. This is the director of the FBI. We're getting some answers to some things, but many of his answers just raise more questions. I also want to tell you we now have body cam footage from one of the Secret Service agents on the roof with the shooter talking about how they lost sight of this guy, how they had a text picture of him, lose him, and why would President Trump be allowed on stage? Well, members of Congress asked Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, that. We're now getting information that a drone was flown 2 hours before the rally by the shooter. How in the world did that not raise red flags as to who's flying a drone above a rally site where a future president is speaking and, of course, a former president as well? So we're going to get to the bottom of all this. I'm going to play this body cam footage for you right off the top. Author John Leake is with us. He is a true crime journalist, an investigative reporter, investigative author. We're going to get to some of his findings with this shooting because, to me, nothing is adding up as of yet. So with that, folks, let's get the party started. Oh, yes, I want to remind you, though, first, before we do that, the show is brought to you by the wellness company, twc.health/Grant. Use the promo code GRANT for 10% off. You got to get these prescription medication kits, ivermectin, Z-Pak, so much more. If you don't have it as part of your preparedness plan, you are behind the 8 ball. twc.health/Grant. Use that promo code GRANT. All right, let's get it started.
Uncensored and unapologetic. This is Stinchfield. Here's your host, Grant Stinchfield.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So FBI Director Christopher Wray holds this hearing, or is the subject of a hearing today. And here's what we have learned. We learned that the request for personnel was rejected. That was confirmed again by members of Congress, by the Secret Service. That was a 180-degree change from where they were before, telling us, no, there were no requests for more manpower. And now, again, we confirmed it again today that there were. We know that he flew a drone 2 hours before the rally, the shooter. We know he had explosives in the car. We're really getting another picture of, can the FBI be fair? I'm not convinced the FBI can be fair. I'm excited to ask this question of our guest. We know the shooter got off 8 shots. If you have a counter sniper on a roof with eyes on, how do you get off 8 shots? Why wasn't he taken out beforehand? They try to get to the bottom of this, and really we don't get any great answers about that. He had these bombs in the vehicle that apparently were unable to be detonated because the receiver in the car was turned off. The transmitter that the shooter had with him on the roof was on, but Christopher Wray says he doesn't think the bombs could have been detonated. Either way, still a dangerous situation. A lot to talk about this, including the Heritage Foundation tracking the movements of what they believe was the shooter's cell phone ending up at a building that houses the FBI days before the shooting. What is that about? We'll talk about some of that as well. So with that, folks, I want to welcome to the program, as promised, John Leake. He is a true crime author. I'd call you an investigative journalist as well, John. Great to have you on the program.
Thanks, Grant.
So, what do you make of all of this, real quick? And I want to play the body cam footage right off the bat, but what's your overall assessment of what's happened? Now we're 10, 11, 12 days out.
I mean, I keep waiting for, where's the invitation that was extended to this young man? I mean, it just seems like he was allowed to walk right in. He was in advance of climbing up on the roof, where he was spotted at least 5 minutes before he opened fire. He was seen walking around the grounds, glancing up at the roof. I've seen the video footage of the boy walking around. It's interesting, his clothing choice kind of matches the color of the building, suggesting that he was trying to blend in with the walls and the roof of the building, suggesting he had advanced surveillance of the building. I mean, everything about this is so unbelievably suspicious as to almost just be unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. This body cam footage I'm about to play for you, I haven't listened to it in its entirety. It's about 3 minutes long. I'm going to play it. We can start and stop it. There were some points, though, that I've learned that I was a little surprised on. They had eyes on this guy. We knew that. Apparently, they lost him. And the Secret Service agent whose body cam this was released by police, by the way, not Secret Service. So it may be a cop's body cam with the Secret Service in the picture. Either way, it tells quite a story. Let's play it, and then I'll get your response along the way, John. Here we go.
All right, so we don't know. So this is the guy
yes, that they sent yes, Beaver County sniper seen and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay, all right.
Rifle right there, obviously.
Got it. So the bike in the back. Is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
I
we're
don't
just
know.
treating that as suspicious device.
Oh, one second. I believe the sniper that seen these and sent the pictures is right inside this building. Michelle, is Greg in there? All right, so if you go to that window that's open and yell for Greg, that's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
All right. This is interesting, John. I'm going to roll this back just a second because we see the window here. I believe are they saying there was another sniper in that window that took pictures of him? It appears to me that's what he's saying there, John. Was there someone not that far away that was in?
All right, so if you go to
that window right there that he's actually pointing on.
Well, so I'm not surprised to hear this law officer say this, because my first thought when I saw some of the photography of the building, facing the building from the stage, is that window on the slightly elevated building, there almost had to have been someone there. If there wasn't someone there, the first question you'd ask is, why the hell not? I mean, it's a perfect view to cover that building, and it provides a vantage point of the showground. So if someone wasn't in that building, it must be answerable, why the hell not? So now we have a law officer saying, well, there was someone in the, so why didn't you intervene?
And check this out. I think what we're about to hear is the person in that window left his post to go look for the person he was taking pictures of, which happened to be the shooter. He leaves his post. The shooter then comes up onto the building. It appears that's what happened. So if he would have stayed put, radioed to officers on the ground to help find this guy, he had texted pictures. We now know that. And Secret Service received those pictures of the shooter, Crooks. So let's continue to listen here and see what plays out.
Window that's open and yell for Greg. That's the sniper that sent the original pictures and seen him come from the bike and set the book back down and then lost sight of him.
Okay.
He's the one that sent the pictures out. I don't know if you got the same ones I did.
I think I did, yeah. He's like got his glasses on and he's
So we had the picture of that.
I got that.
Okay, and then this is his bike with the stuff. And our sniper seen him walking away from that, I believe.
Okay.
But he would be right inside that window. He's the one that physically seen this, sent the pictures, and called it out.
Okay, so and we have somebody detained, correct?
That I don't know.
People detained on this side. Our guy that was just up here told me that there's a guy detained who's the owner of the bike. And I said, no, I think that's the owner of the bike.
Yeah, basically when I got
We've been up here, so we wouldn't know that information.
We just hauled ass. We got over
Right,
it.
got it.
We hopped up
No,
over it.
yeah, no problem.
All right, it's since come out. They're talking about the owner of the bike being the shooter, who's dead, by the way. In the video, not to be graphic, but you'd see his blood basically dripping down the roof. I don't believe Crooks was on a bike, so that's just confusion during the fog of war, if you want to call it that, because he parked his car blocks away, John, and I believe walked. And somehow, whether he dropped the ladder off first or the rifle first, but somehow he gets the rifle and the ladder to the building, and the car then is blocks away from the rally site.
Well, there's a few things to observe in that photo. First of all, the length of the blood trail going all the way down the roof is indicating that this investigator has showed up a fair amount of time after he was shot. So the first thing I'd ask is, who was the first law enforcement to come to the scene? That has struck me suspicious or strange all along. Who secured the scene? There's no yellow tape. The other thing I would observe is notice that Crooks's head, and you can see from the bloodstain pattern, he died right where he was shot. It was a lethal headshot. He went straight down. He's a few feet down the roof.
Yeah.
He's down from the ridgeline. So consider that, like, someone, a sniper, was able to see him when he was a few feet down the ridgeline. So that raises another question. Where were the snipers? Why didn't they see him creeping up the roof? The other thing to observe is that his weapon has been separated significantly from his body. So the question I would ask is, did the first responding officer, did he separate the weapon from the body? Or, and this is important, did Crooks have it in his mind? Did someone give him the impression, after you shoot the president, throw the weapon away from you? That will preserve your life. They won't shoot you. They'll want to preserve you as a witness. So that needs to be answered. Did he toss the weapon to his left? Because if he did, then you have to ask, why did the sniper then shoot him after the fact? There's so many questions.
There are.
Raises.
And, you know, it would be standard protocol for an officer to go up on scene if he has the weapon to separate the weapon from him. Just God forbid he wasn't dead and that kind of thing. But we don't know. These are all questions that most certainly need to be answered. All right, I'm going to continue playing it here.
Is that all your stuff?
That was one of our
Yeah, so someone came up looking to treat him and this
Yes.
Okay.
Copy. Gas is off to the building, just so you know.
Thank you. Yeah, they do. I talked to the guy. They were those people detained were filming.
You know, one of the things
Maybe they
here,
were involved.
and I'm going to pause it for a second and just back it up. That's the water tower. Remember, there was a lot of talk about the water tower. I don't know if we've really gotten a good idea of where that was in relation to the rally site. But again, if you were a sniper, the water tower would be a spot. The roof would be a spot. But John, you know, there was talk of a second shooter on the water tower. I don't know how you get up there and down there without being really spotted and get away. That's a long way to go up and down if you're talking about going up that water tower and shooting.
Well, you know, the talk of a second shooter, I think the original concept was from Lee Harvey Oswald being in the school book depository. He's just some dumbass patsy. The CIA knows he's coming, or they know he's there. They put another pro shooter just to make sure that the president is shot, not knowing if Oswald is responsible, is reliable or not. So if your investigative hypothesis is that a pro marksman was put somewhere in order to back up Crooks, it raises the question of why he missed, because it wasn't a difficult shot. It really, for a professional marksman with proper equipment and a proper sight, that wasn't a difficult shot. The other thing I'll quickly observe about the second shooter, I'm not saying there wasn't one. I'm not. But I'm saying if you're doing some kind of auditory analysis and you hear what sounds like different weapons firing, in order to do that analysis properly, you'd have to control for the sensor. You have to know that the sensor is not changing positions. The iPhone has a sensor on the front right here, and it has a video sensor here. So in what direction was the phone pointing at the time the shots were fired? These questions would have to be answered.
Look, this would explain why when it first happened and I was on live on Real America's Voice, the first video I heard of it, I thought it was fireworks or small arms fire. And what I ended up realizing is it's not my naked ear that's hearing it. It's the microphones that are picking it up and actually suppressing the sound of it. And you're not getting a real full spectrum of the sound on the microphone. Now, computers could end up figuring it out what it is and if there's different ones. But the naked ear was going to have a real hard time unless you were actually there. Then I think you'd have an easier time if you've been around guns for a while. All right, let's continue playing this.
I talked to the guy. They were those people detained were filming.
The American Water was notified. They authorized.
Maybe they were involved. Maybe they weren't.
Will start somebody.
Other than that, I haven't heard anybody.
Well, I think it's
Nothing. Hold out the line.
the guys that saw them filming were like, oh, they were filming us, and then filming the guy up on the roof, and then filming us, and then when the shots started firing, they tried to run away. It was like, Isn't that what everybody would do that has a phone? You know, I'm not saying they weren't involved, but you know what I mean? Like that.
It's still in the air right now, right?
Right. So I got no problem detaining them. But again, I'm just trying to detain those guys, find out what they know, who they are, whatever.
All right, so this is interesting. What he's saying is he's talking about the witnesses on the ground, that we're filming the shooter, then filming us, meaning Secret Service / law enforcement. John, I know you know because you've been investigating this, and people were flabbergasted. Nobody was doing anything. They were literally yelling at people. There's a man on the roof with a gun, and so he says, doesn't it make sense that once the shots start firing, they run? It doesn't mean they're involved with it. It means they're shooting, videotaping us, most likely because you're not doing anything. So they're capturing this. Look at law enforcement not doing anything. We've got this guy on the roof. They're not doing anything. Shots fired. They start running. And even the Secret Service agent, who is a Secret Service agent, the man in the suit with the sunglasses, says, isn't that what everybody would do? I'm not saying they're not involved, but that seems to be pretty common. You hear gunshots, you start to run, John.
Well, I mean, the people on the ground filming this guy, they're just standing just west of the building. They're screaming bloody murder and pointing their iPhones at the guy and trying to wave at the cops. I mean, this whole thing that you've shown me, Grant, to me is very, very strange. I mean, first of all, why is there only one guy? I would expect another backup officer to be watching carefully the reactions of the law officers being interviewed. This whole thing looks stagey to me. But anyway, to address your question, if you look through an iPhone and you're videoing this kid crawling up the roof, and he's lying in a prone position with his rifle up over the ridgeline, okay? I can see where he's pointing his rifle. He's pointing it at the former president of the United States, okay? So I'm not worried about him, or I'm not my immediate perception is he's trying to take out the president. The people on the ground hold their position and continue filming the guy and continue screaming bloody murder. So is the suggestion, I want to make sure I understand, that no law officer on the ground could take any kind of action, could do nothing but to sort of run away? I find this very difficult. And the other thing I'll point out, if you look through the viewfinder of an iPhone, you might as well be looking down the sight of a Glock 9mm pistol. I mean, why couldn't a law officer on the ground at least some kind of suppressive fire, just something? Well, why was it necessary?
So as someone, for people who don't know my background, I worked for the NRA for a long time, been around guns a lot, and I've had the great ability to train with police officers. Both I'm certified in basic SWAT and advanced patrol tactics, and I'm not a police officer, but I've trained with them over the years. You've just got to be really careful about firing a weapon if you don't know the situation, and especially firing up in the air that way. What goes up must come down. You don't know where that bullet's going to come down someplace. Now, the other side to this is, and I think the most simple response to this would have been, we have a suspicious person. We can't find him. Now we've got people yelling somebody's on the roof. You have got to get President Trump off the stage. I'm not even sure why they let him on the stage to begin with when you had all of this uncertainty surrounding everything. And now we add up a drone 2 hours before. There's ladders by the roof. Nobody makes a walk around this building and sees a freaking ladder by the building. Why was President Trump allowed to take the stage? That goes to the first part of this. The second part is, maybe to get back to what you said, I interviewed the former LA County Sheriff. He said, if nobody is listening to you and you're law enforcement, you know that there's a guy on the roof and you can't fire up there. Why don't you lay off 3 shots into the ground? Literally, that would get the attention of Secret Service. I promise you that, and President Trump would be off the stage if you fire 3 shots. Now, I've never seen a cop do that. I questioned his advice of doing that, but I don't know, if you can't get the attention of fellow law enforcement, maybe that would have been a good idea.
Well, but Grant, I mean, look at the iPhone footage of crooks crawling up the roof. You know, that angle, it's a fairly oblique angle, and there's trees immediately behind him. He's firing with an AR-15 at a crowd.
Yeah.
I believe if there's not a set of circumstances in which a law officer is called upon to intervene, in the case of an active shooter shooting at a crowd of people 400 feet away, then what are the grounds for intervening?
Well, you saw the sniper actually react poorly when the shots went off. I don't have the video right now, otherwise I would play it of the sniper. He hears the shots and he comes up off his scope to look around and then comes back down his scope, which may be a reason why the shooter was able to get off 8 shots. A highly trained Navy SEAL sniper, Army Ranger sniper, is never going to take those shots will be fired. They are not taking their eyes off the scope, out of the scope, and they are taking out the target as that happens. You see him get surprised. He comes up and then comes back down. That was a bad situation right there.
So he kind of looked C team. What I'll say is, so there are 2 counter sniper teams, one on the south barn, one on the north barn, one on the south barn. The 2 guys on the north barn, they're getting most of the press that we've seen. There's a lot of cameras pointed at these guys. That's the guy that comes off the scope. He's apparently trying to get a larger view of the roof line, not the narrow view of the scope. It's possible that the way Crooks had positioned himself was slightly obscured by those trees on the east side. Okay, but stop and think about this. There are 2 sniper teams, 2 counter sniper teams. The guys on the south barn have an unobstructed view because they're the ones that shot him, apparently. Now, we could go into talk of another sniper who was off somewhere else, 458 yards away. To me, this just seems like more misdirection. The way you would do it is you take that ridge line and you'd communicate with the other guys and you'd assign a section of the ridge line to scope.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to be scoping that ridge line, waiting for something to pop up. You wouldn't wait. Once he pops up.
By all accounts, I think they had him in sights. They just didn't know whether he had a firearm or they were waiting for whatever reason. And that's the question that needs to be answered. Let me play some more of this body cam.
I'm trying to get clear information to relay back to DC.
Bring control to the water tower.
We have 1 shooter deceased. I think we have
idea.
3 victims in the crowd. Did you guys hear that too?
That I'm not sure.
So I heard 1 deceased, 2 life-flighted.
I know 2 helicopters did take off.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know how many
Hello?
victims.
3 are
Fox
deceased.
Delta 1 command. We have access to a drone. Clear this water tower.
Any LE?
I will try to confirm.
So now they're talking about clearing the
van.
water tower. When you're literally, I don't know.
Copy.
I don't know how, and that's the end of it. I don't know how long this was after the shooting, but I have to believe it was a little bit after. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, they're still talking about clearing the water tower there, which is why you think you'd have assets in the air, and it doesn't appear they had any aerial assets in this to aid in their surveillance of this rally site, John.
Well, they're up there a while after this. I mean, so the blood would have come down from the head wound. It would have kind of, that the body would have obstructed it. It would have pooled, and then at a certain point, gravity would have pulled it down. To me, it looks like they're up on the roof several minutes after the actual shooting.
I think that is probably true. All right, so we had a hearing today. It's still going on. Christopher Wray is the director of the FBI who's in front of Congress. I want to tell you about that hearing, but before I do that, folks, let me remind you about my friends over at Patriot Mobile. I have a Patriot Mobile phone. The best thing about this phone is not only that it's America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. It's not only that they support conservative values, Second Amendment, sanctity of life, our veterans and those kinds of things, literally taking some of the money you pay and putting it towards those programs. That's great. But I love this phone because I have 2 lines on it from 2 different networks. It's called a Patriot One plan, 1 phone, 2 lines. So if I'm in a city where one of the networks doesn't work well, I just use the other line, and I'm in business. Think about it in a natural disaster. Sometimes AT&T might go down, but you got a Verizon line on here. You're good to go. And this is what I have on here. And also for business, not to mention you may need 2 lines. That's a great situation as well. So how do you get a Patriot Mobile phone, folks? It is so easy. I don't know why you're not switching. Why are you funding the woke left? It is not worth it. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. 972-PATRIOT is the number to call. 972-PATRIOT. Use that promo code GRANT for a free month of service. And I promise you, you're going to be part of a team that's moving America in the right direction. PatriotMobile.com/Grant. 972-PATRIOT. You tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you. All right, John, I've got audio. And I think the first question was what I asked you. Whenever you have a tragedy, whether it's 9/11 to a drunk driving accident to the potential assassination of a president, it's a series of events that go wrong that lead up to the ultimate tragedy. It's never one thing. Literally part of that series is you didn't stop the guy, you don't notice the drone, you didn't cover the roof, all of that. But the number one thing is, why do you let the president take the stage when you have all of these uncertainties? So Dan Bishop, who's a very good conservative, asked Christopher Wray that. I'm going to let you listen to this.
Frankly, and tell us what you know. I think the American people want to know. Why was President Trump not kept off the stage?
We don't know the answer to that, but I want to be clear, and this is important because I think it goes to questions that I can and cannot answer. Our investigation, the FBI's mandate, is focused on the shooter and all things related to his attack. Now, obviously, I understand very much the intense interest and focus on the Secret Service's performance, actions, decision-making, et cetera. There are 2 separate after-action reviews, the DHS Inspector General and the outside independent panel that's been convened that are focused on that. Now, our
everybody
investigation
understands
will
obviously
overlap
Director
with
Wray.
that.
Here's the problem. We're out 13 days. And you say we've been disclosing. You know, we had the the colonel from the Pennsylvania State Police in front of Homeland yesterday. He was quite candid. He disclosed to us that Butler Emergency Services Unit personnel were posted into the windows on the 2nd floor of the AGR building, that they left there to go pursue the person that they spotted, Crooks, that they texted a photo of Crooks to the PSP representative in the command center. That information was relayed to the United States Secret Service. They asked that it be texted to someone else. That was many minutes before President Trump took the stand. What we don't know is why were they not keeping him off the stand? And to the extent, you know, I know we always hear when there's a criminal investigation, you got to wait for that to develop. But do you have any reason to, do you have any other target of your criminal investigation other than Crooks, who's dead?
We are investigating the shooter both to determine his motive and his preparations and activities before the shooting, but also to make sure whether or not there are any co-conspirators, accomplices.
At this point, have you developed any evidence to so suggest that there are any accomplices or cooperators or assisters?
Not at this time, but again, the investigation's ongoing.
So here's the thing.
All right, so 2 interesting points here. He says, I don't know why President Trump was allowed to take the stage, as if even he is baffled by the idea of President Trump taking the stage. I don't know is clearly not acceptable, but he is in the FBI, not the Secret Service. Not his purview. I'll give him that. The other part of this is, are there any other accomplices? Did he have help? He says he knows of no one that helped him at this time, leaving the investigation open. My problem with the FBI is I never actually know whether to believe them or not. He seems credible when he says that, John, but I don't know if he had help or not through all of this. Do you believe him when he says, no, there's no other bad actors involved in this that he knows of now?
I don't believe anything he says. I mean, this is the Department of Justice and its conduct for the last 8 years has shown a lack of impartiality where Donald J. Trump is concerned. I don't believe anything these guys say. You know, there was, I mean, for 2 minutes, there are people on the ground yelling, pointing, frantically yelling and pointing. There's someone on the roof. Why not just tell Donald Trump to get down? Just hit the deck, just anything. Just let him sit there pointing away at this overhead display thing without saying a word to him. just hit the deck
Yeah.
would have sufficed.
Yeah.
Let me give you something that people forget. You see, our news flow is so insane that we forget things of the past. In 2015, I suddenly remembered this yesterday, the Curtis Colwell Center in Arlington, Virginia. There was some kind of convention that was going on there that was deemed to be Islamophobic. The FBI had been observing for years a couple of boys who lived in Phoenix, Arizona, who'd gotten mixed up in their online communications with radical jihadist circles. There was an undercover FBI agent who was texting with them and encouraging them to go ahead, get in their cars, go to Austin, and attack this scheduled convention. In his own words, and this is all public record because it was the subject of a lawsuit by a security guard who was wounded, the undercover FBI agent said, "Tear up Texas." They actually tracked these boys on the whole drive from Phoenix to Arlington, Texas. The undercover agent who'd corresponded with them followed them into the convention center. They're armed to the teeth, multiple rifles, covered with ancillary magazines. Had it not been for an old-timer security guard who was just a good quick draw with his sidearm, these guys would have shot the whole place up.
Yeah, I remember that story. I was covering that for the local TV station at the time when that happened. And the FBI, you're right, has a long history of this. Do you remember his name was Hossam Smadi? He was the guy that was trying to blow up one of the downtown office buildings, drives a vehicle filled with phony explosives in his car, ready to detonate it in the bottom garage of this giant high-rise in downtown Dallas. He was recruited by the FBI off a chat board as a radical Islamic extremist, and the FBI sets up this car to go blow the building up. And meanwhile, it's fake, and he hits the button, and then the FBI rushes in and arrests him as a terrorist. Think about Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. The FBI sets up the kidnapping plot to have these so-called right-wing extremists go kidnap the governor, and they get so far down the road that the FBI had this all set up. You could see how it could get out of control if they don't have hands on every moment of the day. And I'll raise this question to you, not to be a conspiracy theorist here, okay? But we now know that thanks to the Heritage Foundation, they tracked the cell phones with these unique identifier numbers. They took, where does Matthew Crooks work? Where does he live? They found a cell phone number like they did in 2000 Mules that matched, so they assumed that's Crooks' cell phone. They follow that in the days leading up to the shooting. Home Depot, they believe that's when he buys the ladder, going scouting the building, but also goes to a building that houses many different stores, shops, and offices, but also has the FBI in the building. Okay? We don't know if he went to the FBI, but it's a building with an FBI office in there. We know he also has this gun range that we now know is used by the FBI. And not in an official capacity, but many law enforcement agents go to this gun range. Is it out of the realm of possibility, knowing what we know of all the things I just explained, of what you just explained, that there might be a law enforcement agent that go, hey, here we're at a gun range. We know the FBI's woke as all can be, and they hate gun owners. Wouldn't it be great to take out this president? Wouldn't it be great? And maybe trying to set something up or feel people out. Not that they had anything to do with it. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I'd like questions answered. But it's not out of the realm of possibility that this is something that could happen.
No, it's the most plausible hypothesis on the table. I mean, I know an FBI whistleblower from Oklahoma City who came out and blew the whistle saying we were following Timothy McVeigh a long time before he actually dropped the fertilizer truck off. That this was, he said, in my view, like, how the hell do you explain why we suddenly lose this guy? We were watching him. So what I want to say is we start with an investigative hypothesis, and all that we know, all of these suspicious circumstances, immediately in the most urgent way prompt the question, was this boy, like the Islamic guys in 2015 in Arizona and Phoenix, was he, unbeknownst to him, having communications with an undercover FBI agent who, like our precedent from 2015, encouraged the boy? So not tear up Texas, but it would be something like, hey, I heard there's going to be some pretty good shooting on Saturday in Butler. Or there's going to be a great shooting range between the American Glass Research Institute building and the stage in Butler. Veiled stuff like that, kind of like tear up Texas. And then, so the boy gets in his car. What are the communications? So I don't see why the FBI can't disclose this boy's cell phone and computer online communications.
Well,
why can't they?
Isn't it interesting, John, that we were told he didn't have a social media presence? Now he does have a social media presence. We were told that he had 2 phones, by the way. Who has 2 phones with 27 contacts in one phone? That tells me that phone was probably a burner phone, and you may have another phone someplace else. No 20-year-old kid, I don't care if you're alone or not, only has 27 contacts in your phone at 20 years old. Nothing. We're just not getting the answers. And first we get the runaround, then we get more answers, then they contradict what they say early on, which leads us all to believe we don't believe what's coming out of the FBI. One of the other questions, and I wonder about this whole FBI Iran plot to kill President Trump. I've been saying Iran wanted President Trump after he killed that evil guy who was a Soleimani back when. That clearly Iran wants President Trump dead. This idea that there's a assassination attempt against him, I don't think is anything new. I think the FBI releases this to take some heat off either the Secret Service or just muddy the waters. But Wray was asked about the FBI plot, about the Iran plot to assassinate Trump, and when they knew, and Jim Jordan asked him this. Let me play it for you.
Director, when did the FBI learn that Iran was threatening President Trump's life?
So I want to be a little bit careful here, not to talk about specific classified information, but we have been for quite some time, and I'll stick with what's in the open record. We, for some time, and I in particular for some time, have been calling out the efforts by the Iranian government to attempt to retaliate for the killing of Soleimani by going after current or former prominent U.S. officials. And we've even had an indictment against it. And I think that we need to recognize the brazenness of the Iranian regime, including right here in the United States. And I expect that we're going to see more of it, and I expect there'll be more coming on that. I'm not aware of any threat information related to protectees that wasn't, passed in a timely way, but I can't really get into specifics here.
It's minority's time here, but I just felt that was a question the committee needed to understand, and it sounds like you've known that for a long time, and that information was conveyed to the Secret Service?
Any information related to threats against the former president, which again, as we've sort of talked about, is happens all too often, is something that we have a whole process we routinely share with the Secret Service at a number of levels in a timely way, and to my knowledge, that has consistently been followed.
All right, John Leake, true crime author. That was something that I don't want to gloss over. Anytime there's threats to President Trump, which happens all too often, we never hear about that. Not surprising to me that there's threats against him, but all too often means this man faces a lot of threats. I've been saying for a long time, before the shooting, you can go back podcasts a year ago. I did a podcast. They want President Trump dead. It's the only way they can stop him. Secret Service better be on its game. And now we hear Wray say there are threats all the time to this man.
I mean, these guys, how they even say this stuff while keeping a straight face? I mean, this is such obvious misdirection from the question, okay, whether the threat be coming from abroad, whether it be some local kid who reads the Washington Post, which explicitly compared Donald J. Trump to Adolf Hitler. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's the would-be assassin is an agent of foreigners or of domestic interests, you still have to put security on the rooftop 400 feet from the stage. I mean, everybody whenever we're confronted with something that's anomalous and puzzling and confounding like this, everybody acts as though, there's some mystery about how this kind of procedural work is done. This kind of procedural work has been well understood, well described, well characterized for decades. I mean, Gavin DeBecker, who runs private security for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. because the Biden administration wouldn't provide Secret Service protection, he wrote a book in 2008 called Just 2 Minutes, in which he methodically shows when you have a protectee and he's participating in an event in public, how do you examine the surrounding area? And the first thing you do is you look at roofs with a clear line of sight and you secure them. Period.
And again, you don't need to be a special operator or a Secret Service agent to know that. All you got to do is play Fortnite with your 14-year-old son, and you know that if you climb up someplace high, you got a better chance of taking out your enemies down below. It really is that simple. Well, I know you'll be on this case following it. I love reading your Substacks. Where can people find you, John?
Well, Dr. Peter McCullough and I have a daily Substack newsletter, Courageous Discourse with Dr. Peter McCullough and John Leake. I should quickly say, we believe that all of the madness that we've seen for the last 4 years, all of these different public policy issues that seem so strange and confounding, they're all related. Mm-hmm. It's the U.S. federal government has come unmoored from proper constitutional protections for the citizenry, whether it be public health, whether it be protecting a presidential candidate that is perceived to be in opposition to deep state interests. All of these are related. Yep. So Dr. McCullough and I, Courageous Discourse with Dr. Peter McCullough and John Leake. I also write other investigative stories, which I publish about on my website, authorjohnleake.com.
And I urge people to check it out. You do great work. It's been great getting to know you over the years. And obviously, Dr. Peter McCullough, everybody in this audience knows who he is. And we appreciate you spending some time with us and breaking this all down. And we appreciate what's to come in the future from you.
Thank you, Grant. May I just conclude with one last observation? It's very, very important for everybody because there's so many good citizens out there who are interested in knowing the truth of this. There were so many, unlike just the Zapruder tape, which is this kind of grainy thing, we've got hundreds of good citizens that have recorded this. My strong encouragement is for everybody to stay focused. Why wasn't that building and its rooftop secured? That's the question. And these guys are going to be doing a bunch of misdirection, magic tricks. We're going to hear about all different kinds of things. Until the question of why that building wasn't secured is not answered, we don't have law enforcement answering this properly.
Yeah. You're 100% correct on that. And I appreciate you offering up that reminder. And folks, I would tell you that I don't trust government. I opened up the Real America's Voice show last night, basically saying I don't trust this government anymore. I certainly don't trust this FBI anymore. I thought I could trust the Secret Service. It was one of the few agencies. Yes, they had their problems with partying and, agents getting a little rowdy while off duty, but I always thought I could trust them. Now I don't know anymore. I think DEI has infected our nation's government. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is a cancer inside what is already a bureaucratic environment that has only made it worse and made us unprepared to handle the threats against us, from our military now to our law enforcement and beyond. So that's something we need to keep an eye on. But the trust in government, to me, folks, is just absolutely disappeared. Let me just remind you again, folks, if you don't have the prescription medications on hand in case of an emergency, you're putting your family at risk. You can get this easily. No other company is doing what the wellness company is doing. Just go to twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off, and be ready for whatever happens. We saw cyber attacks. We saw the hurricane down in Houston. Drugstores closed down. God forbid you need some, maybe just be a urinary tract infection. As me, I used it a couple weeks ago for my strep throat, amoxicillin on hand, start popping that, bing, bang, boom, I'm all better. twc.health/grant. Use that promo code GRANT for 10% off. Don't forget, folks, as well, the website, grantstinchfield.com. Sign up for the email list there. Stinchfield1776 on all the social media platforms. The website and the email list, how I keep in touch with you. God forbid we're canceled. Already today, there were problems with Instagram. My whole Instagram was acting up. Strange things where posts were being moved and just bizarre. So I don't trust big tech whatsoever. Get on my email list, grantstinchfield.com. We'll have more on the hearing. What else comes out today on the Real America's Voice show tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you like this video, share it, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe everywhere you possibly can. I so appreciate you. Stinchfield's Army rolls, folks. We'll see you tonight on Real America's Voice.